So one of the most common questions we get as analysts, as brokers as well, is what is the criteria we look at when trying to find alpha or investment opportunities in the market? So I think may as well take it away, Ben. What are some of the things that you look at?
First, you have to break it down into macro and micro, and I might take the micro side of things. And this is what gives us an edge in the market. And by micro, I mean you have to value every sector differently, whether that's GameFi, whether that's layer one, whether that's meme coins, AI. You have to take a different approach to every investment you make. And would you like to talk about the macro side of things?
Yeah, definitely. So as you said, we look at the micro and macroeconomic factors. So these do influence our markets in different ways. And, despite crypto being its own sector, macro events always affect every market. So being able to understand regulatory development, economic policies, and also market sentiment, they all tie into the way and the success of the crypto industry. So on a macro scale, that is definitely what we look at.
Cool.
So Kane, being head of the analyst team, I know that you have a pretty astute qualification process for projects. I know there's a 5-step criteria that a project must meet before it can even go through and be qualified in as a project we'll even discuss as trending. So I'd love to hear from you, from the horse's mouth. Talk to us, what is this 5-step process you go through? I'm sure everyone's willing to know.
Yeah, great question. So, we've been able to break our investment thesis down into about a 5-step criteria. Obviously, it's not perfect because every sector has their own unique approach. But yeah, for example, one of the main things we do look at is we do deep dive into data tools. So using things like DeFi Llama, Masari, we look at Glassnode, we look at Token Terminal. These are really great tool aggregators that we can use to validate the success of different protocols. So we can be able to look at things like TVL, which is a total value locked in projects or in ecosystems. We can look at revenue that is being generated from different projects as well. So these are key data points that we have to look at to, help us shape if this is a viable product, basically. So yeah, that would definitely be the first one that we look at. Ben, did you want to take away with the second?
Of course, there's fundamentals. And to me, that means one, looking at the team behind the project, because the team's so crucial to drive constant innovation and to make sure it has a market presence. And so we really look at the team, their past history, see if they're on the same page, see what they're driving to do. And that's one thing we have to tick off. And then moving on for that, we also have, is the product viable in the market we have? So for example, of a product that might not be viable, it could be another layer 2 on the Ethereum chain. Yes, we need Arbitrum. Yes, we need a few others, but there could be so many built that don't really meet a need in the market, and that might not meet our criteria. But an example of a project that could meet our criteria is Deepbook on the Sui ecosystem, which is the liquidity foundation for Sui, and a project we found very early on.
Yeah, you make a really good point. Viable product is so important. We see so many projects just launch tokens for the sake of it, just for a money grab, basically. So being able to establish which ones actually need a token, which ones are just putting it there for the sake of it is really important. We also look at tokenomics being the third criteria. So understanding the token schedule, emissions as well, they're really important because this is what shapes the future of a project. So understanding if it's got inflation or deflationary characteristics, that is really important to know because that's what ends up, bringing more liquidity on market.
Nice. And there's another one as well, which is if the token has value accrual. And a good example, and especially one that's very relevant today, is Hyperliquid and its native token, Hype. So Hype will be used as the gas token on its layer 1. It can be used to stake. It can be used in liquidity pools. It's got a massive utility behind it.
Yeah, and I think value accrual is so important because, if a token has, if a project has a token, it has to have some method of bringing value back to the token. Otherwise, there's no point of having it. So utility is probably the biggest driver, as you said. So gas tokens, revenue can be another big factor. So a revenue sharing token, they're all really strong value accrual methods. And then finally, number 5, social proofing. So understanding the sentiment behind it, as well as looking at their socials. So things like looking at X, looking at different social medias that they have, because you can kind of gauge, things like their follower count, how much people are talking about that, the community behind the project as well. Strong community always kind of correlates to a really strong project and strong growth potential as well.
So at the end of the day, it's not about chasing hype in crypto. It's about finding true alpha through an analytical approach. And that's what takes you to, a lot of the time, the best investments.